Hello everyone, Jak Syn here on behalf of Fiend.com and Future Daze, and today it is another exciting episode of Artist Interviews. Today I am sitting with Jeppe of Dynatron. How you doing today?
Hello, Jack. Nice to see you. Nice to be here.
Well, it's nice to have you on the show today. It's nice to sit here and talk to you and find out more about your amazing music and your career and all your creativity. So how is it over there right now? It's like nighttime right where you're at.
Yeah, exactly. It's at almost 9 p.m. So it's just like enjoy the coziness inside our houses.
Yeah, well, the sun's like beating down over here in Los Angeles. It's just hot today. You know what I mean? Like the weather is, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's like anytime the sun's out around here, it's like we're like, oh my God, I'm dying out of heat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we don't really have that a lot of heat in Denmark. It's about 10-15 degrees Celsius. I don't know what's that in Fahrenheit, but it's not that warm actually.
Oh, well, you're probably like 50, 60, somewhere in there, probably Fahrenheit. You know what? I have always had this thing where I would love to go to Denmark and see what Denmark is all about. I've been to a few places in Europe. I've been to like Germany and I've been to like London, but I always wanted to like visit places like France, Denmark, Norway, places like that, just to see what it's all about. You get a sense of
Yeah.
what you guys have going on.
Well, I'm a Danish dude, so I don't really know how it is for a guy like you getting into Denmark, how that feels. But I people say we are very nice and friendly, but I also hear people saying that we're kind of reserved in this weird way. So, well, you're more than welcome to come over.
Well, I would definitely love to check it out, and you're a very nice guy, and I cannot wait to get into all the great stuff you have going on and find out more about who you are as an artist. Today, we're going to ask you a couple of questions and see where it goes from here. Are you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
What are three of your most memorable moments from your musical career?
I think discovering synthwave was something that was very big for me because I have been playing metal for many years, and I actually kind of tired of it because it seems like it was just the same wheel going around, and I was kind of looking to expand my musical territory, and I had trying to write electronic music. I was not very successful. I had tried to write a few songs and it wasn't that good. Let's just be honest. And so I think it was in 2011, and my friend Søren, he's actually Nero77 on YouTube. He was creating all these videos with all these cool bands, and I met him at this gamer convention, and he told me, "Oh, have you seen the videos?" Like, yeah, I have. That's pretty cool. I actually talked to him because he posted a video that was, I think it was Thomas Brandon. I think it was the Quiet Earth, a track which was a track that I really enjoyed a lot. It was like that was something very new to me, something I had not seen or heard before. So naturally, I talked to Søren and say, what's this music about? What's that? And how do I get to know more of it? And he introduced me to a very small community. I think there was about 300 people in a group on Facebook. And that was about all there was to it. Of course, there's more people around out there, but there was only like these 300 people from all the world in this particular Facebook group. So that was just very interesting to me because Søren was posting one song after another and creating these cool videos, and I was just it was so cool, and I really liked it, like almost all that he posted. I was just discovering a new era for me, just like, okay, this is it. This is actually something that I can feel, that I could understand in a way that I had not understood electronic music before. When I was a child, I listened to Jean-Michel Jarre and Vangelis and stuff like that. And that was electronic music. But for many years, I was playing metal with guitars and drums and everything. And just the way that synthwave spoke to me was something very, very raw. So that was a huge moment for me. The second one, that's also a very, very vivid memory I have. I think, I'm not quite sure how old I've been, 12, 13 perhaps. I discovered Metallica and Pantera and stuff like that in the very early 90s. And that was a game changer for me going into music. Like that was just the point where I wanted to do music. And if I was visiting a friend and his dad, he was a vinyl collector, this record collector in general. And he had picked up this vinyl album of a Swedish band called Cemetery. And it was death metal, and I had not heard death metal before. I had heard like thrash metal and the more hard stuff, like some of the stuff that are on the radio. Pantera is it's pretty hard, but this was death metal. I had not heard death metal before, and I remember just putting the record on, and just putting a kneel down and listening, like, holy shit, this is something completely new. I was a very vivid memory because I remember exactly how I stood and how I just the hair stood up on my back, like, whoa, this is extremely cool. So I knew from that point on as well that this is something I wanted to do. That was just amazing. It's just fun just reliving those moments because they are so vital to what you do and the person you are. And the third, announcing my track Cosmo Black being in Cold in July movie, like that was huge for me because I have only been playing synthwave for 2 years. I think it was 2 years because I started out in 2012. This was in 2014 when I announced it, and that was a very it was just amazing. Just I remember I announced it late night, and I was just awake for many hours just to see the reactions. So I didn't get to sleep before 3 or 4 in the morning just because I needed to see the reactions from people, and it was just coming in all the time. It was just amazing to have that experience.
Those memories, those are some awesome memories right there. You know, I mean, for a lot of us, when we are, you know, I know for myself, when I was exposed to this style of music, God, it's 10 years ago. Can you believe that? It's like this stuff has been building for 10 years. Like it's a decade already from that early sound. And you were part of that early sound too. You know what I mean? Like you were part of shaping this into what it is now. Isn't it funny how like when you finally listen to this stuff and you get exposed to it, you kind of go like, what is this? What is this? I gotta know more. And then you fall down that rabbit hole. And yes, you know, 10 years ago, it was very small. You had like you only had like a few artists here and there, you know, like you had people who were transitioning out of that like electro disco kind of thing and into this kind of heavily inspired by, you know, that 80s sound. As, you know, you've progressed over the years, it's like you bring in all of these different influences, you know, all these different things that inspired you as, you know, when you're younger. And through your music, it's like, I could hear the Vangelis. I could hear like the space, like that heavenly vibe that you have. You know what I mean? Like your stuff is like very dynamic. I think that comes from having that metal background too, because a lot of like the metal stuff, it has very heavenly operatic qualities in certain ways that I think that you have managed to really blend into your music that have really kind of propelled you forward.
Yeah. Definitely, playing metal has been a way of expressing myself. Just because you have, when you're a teenager, you are frustrated about it's difficult to understand the world, and so that has definitely been a tool to be very hard about some expressions. But and yet I have played death metal. I always enjoyed playing the slower part as well, doom metal and other types of music that are associated to metal. You know, there's the whole black metal era in the 90s. That just exploded, and that was super interesting to follow. I also listened a lot to black metal, to the side of black metal, you had this dungeon synth that also grew out of the same music scene, which is something very different. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's just this classical fantasy music, which is composed on uh, not synthesizers, but more general MIDI instrument. It's like you have the horns, and you have the strings, and you have the orchestra stuff, and and stuff like that. And it was very inspiring to me as well, because that was more about mood, like having this specific mood that you are getting into. Like if it's called dungeon synth because it's, you feel like in a dungeon a lot. Or there's trolls, or there's castles of Middle Ages and knights, and it's not about the war necessarily, but more like this dark this medieval world that the music like kind of lives inside, and that's very underground. And I enjoyed that a lot. That was really something that spoke to me as well. I'm all over the place if you look into my musical background, because in the 80s I liked listening to the radio because there was a lot of rock as well. You have this 80s rock, and today if I listen to a rock radio station and they play Def Leppard, I just feel like this is super awesome. And Alice Cooper as well, all the good stuff, the rock stuff from the 80s is something that spoke to me just as well as Jean-Michel Jarre did, that my parents played to me. So there's many different directions I have been like going into, and trying to put all that into my music right now is kind of difficult, but it's something that I try to do. Just I try to take the hard the rock stuff and put it into it, then bit of metal as well, because that's a big part of me, who I am, and then have this atmospheric, not specifically dungeon synth music, but the soundscapes that you can create with the synthesizer, and then the whole, the universe is just like a never-ending inspiration to me. So like wrapping it all together.
Yeah, and you're creating a feeling, a mood, you know what I mean? Like when you shut your eyes and you lay back in your bed, you can visualize where you want to be. You can really do that with the music. And you can't beat like 80s rock. I mean, you just can't. Like glam rock, hard rock, heavy metal, like you can't beat that. Like 80s rock, across the board, awesome. Touching on the dungeon synth stuff, it's like I've heard some of it, and I can totally get where you're coming from with that. You do get a sense of like being in an otherworldly place. I think for a lot of people out there, if you haven't checked out any of this dungeon synth, you guys should check it out, because I'm sure this is like, if you wanted to go on a journey, this is some stuff that you would go on a journey to. You really would.
Absolutely. There is it's different kinds of dungeon synth, but some people probably won't like it, but it's different, the experience that you need to take to figure out, is this something for you or is it not?
That's very true. That's like you were talking about metal music and like black metal and things like that. It's like I wasn't like such a huge like metal fan, like a huge black metal fan like my brother was. He loved black metal, but like me, I don't know, I was like having some trouble. And then all of a sudden I found Covenant with a K. With a K. I found them and I was like, oh my God, this right here is like, yes, it's like black metal, but it's like in the stars, somewhere off in a distant universe. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. It just fell on me like a ton of bricks.
Those kind of experiences are truly defining. It sets the path for you forward to follow, because it's something you will carry with you, and it will be in your mind when you do stuff. The music will be with you when you travel, when you do stuff, when you write, when you read, everything that you do, and you have the music with you. So you will very likely have specific times in your life that you remember the most, or when you listen back to an album, you can see, oh, I was exactly at that point when I heard this album the very first time. So it's truly defining moments, and it's something that I value a lot, because it's something that makes music so important to me, because of those moments that we have, that the music can give you.
Yeah, they really kind of help bring you into the person that you become. I know for myself, it's like when after hearing these styles of music and these bands and this awesome stuff, then you start translating it over into the way that you sing. You're inspired by that too. It's like, I know my first band, it was like we were influenced by metal and like have that voice kind of like Danny Filth or like the singer from Doom Over Gear. So it's like having that, you know what I mean? I tried to emulate that. So I would like do these like, these scary voices and things like that. So it was really kind of fun to play around with that. But it sent me on my journey, set me on my journey into the future. And here we are talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember those days. Yeah, well, that was kind of fun with Cradle of Filth. Yeah. Like, I at that point, I remember being very much into black metal and that stage, and it was all about being true and stuff. Over the time, I became so tired of that. Like, it had to be real and it had to be true. But Cradle of Filth definitely was miscredited a lot just because people didn't like the visual expression or the voice that Daniel Filth had, and a lot of bands didn't get the attention that they could have had just because there was this stuff where you had to be true to be real death metal or real metal, and it's actually something that I can recognize in the synthwave scene, because someone talks about it's not real synthwave, and I'm just reminded of how demotivating it was in the metal scene to have that sort of energy put into it as well, because it's just really, it's not helping. It's just making it more difficult for people to actually figure out what they like and what they don't.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. It's like you have a lot of people, a lot of purists out there for this style of music that are, sometimes their voice is really, really loud online. Yes, it's a lot, but that's the beauty of this style of music. This style of music right here is that it can be anything it wants to be. You know what I mean? It can be anything, whether it's blending it with metal, whether it's blending it with like hip hop or like pop, it doesn't matter. It can go in all different directions. And I think that's what the beauty of it is that it's like Play-Doh. You know what I mean? It's like putty. You can stretch it and mold it in anything you want it to be.
Yeah, definitely. It's just weird to see. It's not sure that you will get the reaction that you hope for if you go too much in one specific direction, because you all have the purists talking about, oh, this is not true to whatever. It ties a lot into people missing something from the original days. Like you talk about, it's almost 10 years old. Yeah. And yeah, you cannot have things like they were 10 years ago. It will never be the same. So like, let's just look forward, right?
Exactly. Let's look forward. And I would love to see what it's going to sound like in 10 years from now, because I'm sure it's still on this journey. It's still on this journey. It's bigger. It's definitely bigger than it was a decade ago. It's definitely reached a lot more audiences. I mean, we see that when we do our Synthwave Club nights. When people come to these events, like they come, because they're fans of the music. They come because their friends are fans of the music, or that they just kind of stumbled onto it. And they kind of know, but they don't really know much about it. And they walk away like having a good time. But the one thing that we do see more than anything is that it is a huge rainbow of people from all different backgrounds. It is like going to a synthwave show or going to a synthwave club night. You see metalheads, you see people who are into hip hop, you see people who are into techno, you see people, goth people, candy ravers. It doesn't matter. You see all these different people all within that same space, just enjoying the music and the journey, because that's the most important thing. It's not about purity or whatever. It's all about just enjoying the sound.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing, that we can actually just enjoy it without being colored by who it is that listens to the music. Just that it's just the person that we are.
Exactly. What would you say is your favorite album /EP that you've worked on?
That's a good question. I did release some stuff previously, like metal records, but in terms of what has been the most exciting journey to work on, that's like both in terms of compositions and like artwork and putting it all together and putting it out there. I would actually say it's my first album with Dynatron, just because I was just immensely inspired at that point, and writing tracks was just, it was very quickly to what I came from before with the playing metal band, we were down to 3 people writing the music, but we still had to work together. And this with Dynatron, I was like, I can do whatever I want, what I want. I don't have to listen to a second opinion. I don't have to have my ideas approved. I don't have to work together with anybody other than myself, just to make sure that is what I want. And that this freedom of expression was just super cool. And I don't remember that it took very long to write the album. Of course, it took some months, but it wasn't a struggle at all. It was just basically just writing itself. I was never in doubt of what I wanted to do, and I could just move forward, and just a very happy experience with like putting the music together and putting it out there. I was at the same time I was writing the music and the album, I was just exploring and seeing much more of the synthwave world, just growing in 2012 at the same time. So I felt that was hard to follow or keep up with because it was going so fast. But like, at the same time, when I look back now, I did write this album pretty quickly, and I put it out there, and I created the artwork and just delivered it. And you know, it's been a huge ride ever since. And I can see that the album have been, you know, there's a lot of people who still listen to that album, and that's just very like, I feel so honored in a way, because I'm able to actually give people that experience. And I only created this album because I wanted to, because I was inspired. So I just wrote the album and put it out there. I didn't necessarily want it to be heard or seen other than just putting my music out there, see how it would go, or how it would be received, and see the feedback. That was just like, yes, I wanted to be seen, but I didn't have the intention to change anything or inspire people. But that actually happened, and it's just been huge. It's just at times, from time to time, and getting messages of people saying they're inspired by my music, and it's just a huge feeling. It's a huge gift to be able to give another person, for them to be inspired by the stuff that you do. That's super cool.
Well, you know, that album, Escape Velocity, it is a big album. When I say it's a big album, I mean it's a very dynamic album. You know, it's very feeling oriented. I remember listening to it for the first time, and I was like, oh my God. My feeling was, I am in outer space somewhere. Like, I am on a cosmic journey, because that is what you put me into. You know, a lot of this, you know, synthwave artists, you know, you have that heavy influence by like 80s stuff, you know, like that heavy influence. But when yours came out, it was like you were heavily, I felt like you were heavily inspired by the journey of otherworldly things, you know, and a universe far beyond ours, that interstellar journey that you want to take people on. And that's what I think is what made that album so special. And I think everything that you've released since then, I mean, it's always had this inherent dynamic, spacey kind of feeling. But I think that, because, you know, it's your first, you know, your first is always the most amazing, because you get to break out of your mold. You get to kind of go, I get to do what I want to do now. I don't have to, you know, wait for somebody, like you were saying earlier, approve something, or like say, let's use this or let's not use that. You can kind of just say, hey, I'm going to say what I want to say. And you did say what you wanted to say. You got to express all the things that you wanted to express on that album. And it really paid off. It was really a lot of great choices that you did. And it's definitely one of my favorites.
I'm very happy to hear. Thank you.
What was the drive behind getting you into making music and performing?
There's always been music around me. My parents listened a lot to music, like all the time. When they're just enjoying stuff, like going around the morning playing the radio, there's a song playing on the Saturday, the radio would be on, there was probably some talks and then some music, and they would put a record on later, and like my mom cooks dinner and she puts a record on. So there's also music present in our home. And my dad, he plays the piano and a bit of guitar. He didn't play a lot. It's like at a level where you could just play some tunes and some songs and some chords, and just for for on a level where it's just like for comfort. And so music was always something that I felt was important. I think at the same time, you know, you have this whole new thing that's happening in the 80s where you have the hard rock, much more audience, and you can see you have these like Metallica. They put out Metallica, the Metallica album, the black one, and that just transformed music to something that just, it seems so huge. They went on a more than 2 years tour on that album. I'm not saying that didn't happen before, but just it seemed so huge at that point. Like there was something that transformed the music industry, at least from my perspective, because I didn't know a lot of the music industry before that. Of course, there's a huge band, you know. Later on, I discovered much more bands that were a lot, you know, big bands in the 70s and the 60s as well. But just being 10 years old or 11 when Metallica came out with their Black Album, that was just very inspiring to me. And I remember I had been taking piano lessons because that was it's something you do when you go to school, you play music. And I remember that I decided I wanted to focus on playing guitar at that point. And I wanted to create music. Like that was where I decided I want to create music and I want to play guitar. So I just kept that, like, this is what I want to do. And I just went with it. Before that, I didn't really, had not really decided that I wanted to create music, but I remember that I wanted to create music from that point on. Like I remember my brother and I was like, okay, can we keep our hair just growing? The last one to cut his hair before or after Christmas, I can't remember the exact details, but it was something about letting our hairs just grow until Christmas, and it was the middle of the summer, I believe. It's like I was like, okay, I just kept growing my hair. It's like I had long hair until 2003, so I think I won.
Awesome. I mean, right there, you know, it's like I can relate to that. You know, when I was younger, it was like my dad, you know, because my dad was a disco DJ in the late 70s, early 80s. So he had this huge record collection, you know, lots of CDs and all kinds of stuff like that. So I would wake up in the morning, like I would be waking up to like Phil Collins and stuff like that in the morning, or like waking up to like Earth, Wind, and Fire, like Prince or something, you know, and it was always like there was always something going on. It was just sort of that kind of thing where it kind of stuck with me. It's like having this music play, it was always like there was always something going on in the house with something. Like somebody would always be singing something. My dad would always be like, you know, quoting like, you know, lyrics from a song or something. You know what I mean? I kind of find that same kind of thing where like I'll quote things from movies and stuff like that now as I'm an adult. But you know, I agree with that. Like as you progress, it's like you start to go down your own journey. You know, like yours, you know, with Metallica and stuff like that, and you know, finding that music that spoke to you, and you kind of, I just want to do this. I want to get into this. I want to make music like this. I want to add to this narrative. Before you know it, you start getting into bands. You start playing musical instruments. And I'm not really good at guitar. I'm not really good at like bass or anything like that, but I can play some synthesizer and I can kind of sing. So it's there. You know, when I was starting a band in high school, they were like kind of like, well, you want to try your hand at singing? And go, maybe we'll see where it goes. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there you go. It just sends you down some amazing roads when you actually kind of stick to your guns and open yourself up to a world of possibilities that you wouldn't normally open yourself up to. When you take a chance and you say yes to things, you really will go some amazing places.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you need to take a chance, like you said, and doors aren't always open for you, or there's always possibilities and options that you can choose from, but you gotta put yourself into it sometimes, because I can easily just listen to something where I didn't do anything and just created my songs and just put them on my computer. But this was at a point where I remember I felt like I can do this. I can contribute to this. I can I can create something like this and I can put it out there. Maybe somebody will like it, maybe not. I don't know, but at least this is something that spoke to me, and it's a language that I could understand and I could speak myself. Like, because that is music to me. It's a language. I'm not a writer. I don't write lyrics. I have written lyrics previously, but those were horrible. I create sounds. And I create melodies, and I create compositions, and I produce, and that's the language I talk the best. So that's just that was something I had to choose to do. That was my option. I don't dare to write lyrics anymore because I have been there. I don't do that anymore.
Well, you know, it's a great language, and you have really done some amazing things with your language. I mean, from everything that you've done, composing, creating sounds, creating moods, creating atmospheres. And it really has been a great contribution to this style of music. It really has. And, you know, it's helped influence a lot of artists of today, too, into creating their stuff, because I'm sure when they heard your music, they were kind of going, well, if he's doing this and with his own influences, the way he wants to do it, I can do this too. I can get the things that I love, and I can inject my influences into this stuff too. And I can really make something amazing just like him. Look at what you have done. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, but it's true. Yeah, everybody can do something, and when you feel inspired, you can do something about it. That's true. Yeah, you can.
So to everybody out there, if you're ever feeling on the fence about any of the stuff that you're working on, if it's in this style of music or any other style of music out there, and you're wondering, is this the right thing or is this the wrong thing? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It does not matter, because it's all in the way that you want to convey it. You know, it's like, who knows who's going to love it? Who knows who's going to hate it? People are going to love it. People are going to hate it. But at least it's you, and you're sticking to your guns, and you're doing what you feel is right.
Yeah, that's super important. That's probably the most important thing in music, that you are you. I have had people writing to me telling me to listen to the listeners and let the listeners kind of direct me into how I should write my songs. If I wanted to write music for the radio or for pop or anything like that, I would do that, but I don't. So I write music that I like. I write music the way that I want to tell it, that I want to see it. And of course, I can take recommendations. I can take suggestions and stuff like that, but I don't listen to other telling me how to write my music, because I'm very capable of writing my own tracks. So thanks.
Well, you know, and that's the thing. It's like everything that you release, every album that you put out, it's, you know, you'll have your fans who have loved you since the beginning, but then you're also going to have new fans who appreciate you for this album or that album. It's always going to be new fans. It's always going to be old fans, different generations of people that love your music. To everybody out there, if you're writing music and you've been doing it for years, it's like there are people who are going to love your stuff at the beginning. There are going to be people who are going to love your stuff currently. But it's all of those fans that bridge the gaps in between everything. What are you looking forward to accomplishing the most moving forward?
Just right now, I'm just really looking forward to finish my next album. I have two things that I'm looking forward to do. One is more a long-term goal, and one is just right now, because this album that I've been working on it for 5 years, and 5 years is a very long time for an album. And it's not super healthy either, just to be so inactive for so long. I really need to just get back into the game, because like what has happened is this, like life, you know, my son is 6 years old now. We moved across the country and bought a house, and just life just took some turns, and it's just been difficult to having the same amount of time on my hands to write music. And I kind of lost my path at some point. It took me a while to realize some of the problems that I had when I wanted to write music. In some way, I had erased myself from being part of the music, which is just bonkers because I am the one creating the music. How can I take myself out of the equation? It doesn't make any sense now that I look at it, because this, what happened? But I think it's something that is going back to some of the press material that we wrote for Atenus, that the music is not about the people, but and if there's people like astronauts in the story, they are mere shadows of the events unfolding. And in that sense, I took that and used it as a guideline for myself to write music. And in that essence, I took myself out of the equation because I was just not really there anymore. I was not the asteroid. I was nobody in the equation. I was kind of the one telling the story, but if I'm not the one telling the story, but it's kind of tricky because I just lost myself at some point. But since this winter, that must have been February, March, I started to realize some stuff and kind of turned some wheels in my head and kind of started understanding and working with myself in the mental state that I had, and I could start working again. And for the last couple of months, I've actually been getting a good groove and going back a lot, putting more hours into writing music, and that's been helping a lot to create this album and completing it. So I have songs that are since 2015, 16 perhaps, that I'm completing now. Just it's a long time for a song to be in work. Like you have to complete a song in a shorter time span for it to be the best recipe for writing a song. Is not taking it 5 years. I'm happy that I'm in a much better state now where I can complete my tracks and I can complete the album. And I'm really looking forward to completing this album. I definitely am, because there's a lot of me in that album, actually, which is something that I've been difficult to deal with myself, because I didn't want the album to be about me, but it actually is. Like there's a lot of frustration and this kind of figuring out what the fuck's going on and how do I get through this period and this dry state of writing, and how do I get forward, how do I go forward from where I am. And I actually realized I had to take a lot of those feelings and put it into the album, just to like make it a real album that is about me and what inspires me and the state that I am in to be able to complete it, actually. So this is a lot more personal album than I think my previous album has been. So that's something new, at least. And just, yeah, I'm just looking forward to complete that. Secondly, to write an album that I personally feel is worth it being compared to something like Jean-Michel Rendezvous. It's a personal favorite of mine and an album that I love, really love a lot. And just if I feel I can write an album that is as good as that album, then I really feel like that's a huge accomplishment. That's a milestone, like that, like not the final milestone, but at least it's a huge milestone to get there. Yeah, those are the biggest ones.
And those right there, those are some awesome goals. They really are. I mean, I'm excited for you to bring out this new album. I cannot wait. I mean, yes, I get where you're coming from. Life does happen. That's just the way it is. Life happens. And when it does, it's like sometimes things get put on the back burner. But it's like somewhere something's got to give. You know, right there, like lyrics of song. Somewhere something's got to give, you know? So it's like, yes, when you're working on music, sometimes it takes a few years. Sometimes it does. It's like I was having an earlier conversation with the artist Equator, and he was talking about a conversation with the members of Daft Punk, and they were talking about like how it takes like, 4 years for like a song sometimes, to get it right. And it's like, things take time, and when they're going to happen, they're going to happen. It's just because it's not happening right now, it doesn't mean it's not going to get there. But when it does, it is the perfect time. It is the perfect time. It's all this anticipation that has been building and building and building. I know there are a lot of fans out there, especially people who are watching this interview right now, who love and admire your music and your work. And I'm sure like now that they hear that you have this album that's going to be coming out very, very soon, they're going to be like, oh my God, I can't wait for this thing. I can't wait to hear it. And, you know, through all of this, even with the pandemic happening, it's like a lot of artists out there have been using this time to really create, using this time to the fullest potential to make the most amazing things happen. And I know for myself, it's like I was sitting here on the bed, like back in late March, and I was like, okay, no more shows. I can't, you know, promote new shows right now because, you know, everything's on lockdown. I don't really have any music at the moment. What can I do to help continue to contribute? So I started doing these artist interviews like what we're doing right now. And I did not think that I would be up to 83 episodes. I did not expect that. But that's the thing. It's like you don't expect certain things. And when you have this thing that falls on your head like a ton of bricks, where you kind of go, okay, this is the time to kind of work, like really get into it, find out what I want to convey. Then it's like you're just throwing up ideas. It's like they're all just coming out. You're just finally finishing things up, you know? And I think we've slowed down, given ourselves some time to kind of reflect inwardly and find out what was important to us, and really kind of focus that energy that we've been feeling of, that feeling of uncertainty, that feeling of how do I cope with the world changing, and kind of pushed it into creative ways. I think that's something that you're doing too. And I'm excited for it, and I know it's going to be great. And I know a lot of other people out there are excited for it as well.
Yeah, you kind of hit some very good topics, because that was something that helped me a lot during the in the spring and the summer. It's like that's seeing people taking the time to reflect on stuff. That was exactly what I needed. Like, slow down, take some time and reflect and look, find the stuff that's important. Because sometimes it's looking for a needle in a haystack, but when you find it, you feel very much accomplished, because it's a very difficult task, naturally. For me personally, I listened to Devin Townsend. He put up some podcasts about his previous records, and in the state he was when he wrote the albums. And he had a very difficult time in the 90s, where he had this God complex, and he wrote several albums just having all sorts of challenges and problems that he dealt with. And being able to hear him reflect on all those things, and putting it into that whatever happens in your life, be it bad or good, whatever, it's because you have to learn something, and it takes time for you to learn stuff. And it was very inspiring to me to listen to him talk about this stuff, and kind of get into a conclusion over like 45 minutes or so, and just having this, that there's something you need to learn. So even though it was a bad experience, and you came out with some scars on your life or whatever, there was something you had to learn. There's something you had to deal with. There's something you had to work with in yourself to get out on the other side. And that helped me to look at what was my problem for why I wasn't like able to write music like I used to be, and take his kind of way of working around it and use it on myself, and see what was it that I needed to learn. And that's what you also mentioned, that you need to learn something. There's something we can spend the time to see what it is that we can learn, and how we can benefit from having the time available on your hands, just right there, like in March when everything closed down. Like, okay, right now you have so much time on your hands. What are you going to do about it? And most people just like, oh, I don't know. But over time, you started to figure out stuff like, okay, what's important? What do you feel important? What is it that you want to do about this situation? Because you cannot just sit around doing nothing. So I think for a musician, as a musician, of course, it's sad not to be able to go out and play shows. But actually, I had decided last year not to do any shows for a long time, until I was ready to play new songs because I didn't want to play old songs any longer. So it was just like, here's a free pass to just do that. Just like, I don't have to say no to gigs. They'll stop asking for gigs for a long time. And that's just been actually a relief personally, because I just wanted to focus on writing the next album. So having the time on my hands to do that and learn what I needed to learn was just, it's been very helpful actually. So I'm grateful that we had this opportunity to learn the stuff that we needed to learn.
That right there, because during all of this, we have not had FOMO, the fear of missing out. We're not missing out on anything, okay? The only thing that we're missing out on is time that we could be using to do the things that we want to do here where we're at. That is the only thing. So everybody out there, if you've stayed creative during all of this, if you have continued to build and grow and all of this stuff, keep it going. Keep it going. And for the people who are still wondering what they should be doing or if they should be doing anything, fall into something. Start something new. You know, find out what speaks to you. Find that passion, because as human beings, when we start to create, we start to open ourselves up, we start to build, and we start to tinker, if you will, then that to us is so much more fulfilling. We get to find out who we are inside and what creativity we can really unlock.
We all have something inside ourselves that we can use to express ourselves. It might be difficult to find that specific thing, but when you find it, it's just very nice to have. It's very giving feeling to be able to contribute to the world with whatever kind of art or writing or reading or whatever it is that you can do. That it's just a very giving feeling to be able to contribute to others.
Definitely. What positive message would you give your fans out there?
Well, it ties a lot into what we talked about. So like, never stop being curious and never stop exploring the world, because you only know the limits that you see. When you break the limits, there's a whole new world behind the wall. There's so many possibilities. It kind of resembles what you tell your kid, just like, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to stop where you don't have to be one specific thing. If you want to go be an astronaut, cool, go for it. Of course, if you have no sight and no hearing, there's some possibilities that are limited to you, but probably others are open to you that we, as normal seeing and hearing, we don't see the world the same way that people like that do. And like, that is something that I could explore that, and that would be interesting because it's a whole different world from what we know. But yeah, never stop being curious and never stop exploring, because the world is bigger than we know.
Wise words, everybody. Right here from Jeppe. Never stop exploring. Never stop being curious. Always break down the barrier. Always break the limits. Because when you do, it will take you to some really amazing places that you yourself have never thought you could go to. When you open yourself up to a world of possibilities, those possibilities are endless, and they're all around us every single day. If you put a limit on yourself, you are doing yourself a disservice, because when you wake up in the morning and you plant your feet firmly on the ground and you stand up and you take that first major breath and stretch, you are opening yourself up to a world of possibilities, and anything can happen to you throughout the day. You are in control of the kind of day that you want to have, and you can make it as awesome as you want it to be. So thank you so much, Jeppe, AKA Dynatron, for taking this time to do this interview today with us. Thank you to everybody who tuned in to watch us have this conversation. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our Fiend YouTube channel, as we have many more awesome artist interviews on the way, just like this one with Dynatron. Thank you guys so much. I love you, and I look forward to seeing you guys again very, very soon.
Well, thank you very much, Jack. It's been a huge pleasure to be here, and very nice talking to you, and thank you so much for taking the time.